This episode of the School Zone podcast is brought to you by School Spirit Vending, hassle-free year-round fundraising for your school. At School Spirit Vending, we do all the work. You cash the check. Hey, School Zone listeners, this is Matt coming at you. I am really excited to have our guests on the show today. None other than Caleb Bolenbacher and Tyler Ellis. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I contacted these guys a couple of years ago because I had a desire to start creating some kid-friendly content that might encourage kids to read in conjunction with the machines with my company, School Spirit Vending. So about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, we started a little company called Sticker Swarm Media, and out of that has come the Marlin and Percy comic series. So before we kind of delve into who Marlin and Percy are and kind of the background of that, let me go ahead and introduce each of these guys first. Caleb Bolenbacher, Tyler Ellis. Caleb, why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how we got hooked up and why the heck we're talking, man.
Sure. Well, like you said, I'm Caleb. I am a freelance writer, currently based out of the Boston area. We got started working together. I believe you were in a Sunday school class with my dad a couple years back out in Dublin, Texas. And so he put us in touch. I've known my dad for my whole life, and so he's a good networking asset there. But yeah, I've been writing since I was really little. I like the idea of comics has appealed to me since I was a small child. I remember being like 8, 9, 10 and putting together my comics, kind of tricking myself into thinking that maybe as I got older and practiced more, the art side would come with it. And I had a lot of fun with it, but was not that great, I can readily admit now. But the storytelling stuck with me. Just kept doing that, studied that at Baylor University. And so I've just been telling stories in one way or another, be it books or comics or screenplays for several years now. And then comics, I think, is just such a fun outlet for that, especially the collaborative aspect.
Cool. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, like you said, my name is Tyler Ellis. I've been drawing ever since I can remember pretty much, and working now as a freelance illustrator. I'm in Austin, Texas, so we're sort of, I guess that's telecommuting a little bit, working from different sides of the country, which is pretty fun. Met Caleb at Baylor and kind of worked on a few art projects with him. Didn't really get into comics, I guess, until later in life. Drew a few of them for myself, I guess, when I was little. Not very good. I'm kind of embarrassed to look back at them now. But kind of put that on the shelf and then started working with Caleb, whose interest was more comics focused, I guess you could say. And then kind of started working in that direction and have since collaborated with him on 2, 3, or 4 different projects. I'm not sure how many it's been now. But
like
then
1,000.
It's been a lot. Yeah, that seems accurate. But through him, met Matt, and he kind of reached out to both of us, like Caleb said, and said, here's this project I have in mind. Are you guys interested in collaborating on this? And the rest is kind of history, I guess. That's where we are now, and it's been a lot of fun.
So Tyler, what other kind of art stuff do you do? What other, as a freelancer, what other type of stuff are you involved in? And
oh gosh, that's a good question. A little bit of everything, I guess. A little bit of painting. I like to work in oils and that kind of thing. It's a little bit different. Shakes it up for me some. Most of, I guess, my work is, I guess you could say, digital illustration. A lot of people like stuff like, I guess you could say, more kind of fantasy-themed stuff, monsters and sci-fi and that kind of thing, which is also a thing that I'm interested in, so that kind of works out nicely. But yeah, most of my work is digital. I work a lot in I draw a lot of stuff out by hand, but most of the completed work that I do ends up, I paint it through Photoshop digitally. So that's kind of how I work off of that.
Caleb, what about you and your writing? I understand you've ghost written a few books and that type of thing.
Yeah, man, it's one of those things where with writing at this point, so many people will study literature and creative writing in college, and that's just kind of the end of it. So it's one of those things where, like, I take work where I can get it, and sometimes that means ghostwriting for other people. But in the meantime, I'm just, like, constantly working on my own projects and submitting to agents, kind of hoping something starts to fall and I catch that break. So yeah, when this gig came along, it was just a huge blessing to be able to work with Tyler, who's a great friend and a great person to work with, and then like put together something so fun and get work as well. Yeah, I'm happy to tell like a wide variety of stories. It just kind of depends on my mood. So yeah, it just kind of depends on the day, I guess, if that answers your question. It's kind of all over the place.
Cool. Well, to give the listeners a little bit more background, I was inspired to read at a young age by reading comic books. I used to go to the local Five and Dime or Ben Franklin store when I was growing up in elementary and junior high. I ride my bike downtown, small town Sycamore, Illinois, outside of Chicago, and spend most of my allowance money or my lawn mowing money or whatever on comics. And I read, the Fantastic Four and Superman and Spider-Man and all those back then. And that was really what inspired me to read early on. And so once our company, School Spirit Vending, grew and we were spread out in over 1,000 schools at that point in time, I felt that we now had a platform that we could potentially help inspire kids to read around the country as well. And so Marlin and Percy initially started out as a small 4-panel comic series, similar to like a Calvin and Hobbes or what have you, that would be found on the cardboard folders of the stickers that are vended out of our machine. And so that's where they first appeared. This was about a year and a half ago, so that would have been end of 2013, early 2014, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of grown from there to where now we're in the process of completing in the next month or so the 5th full-length, full-color comic book that's available in ebook format online. And it has just been a wild ride watching you guys be creative and bring that creativity to bear on these two characters for kids across the country. You guys tell us a little bit of background on how you came about, the characters and kind of what the inspiration was for the beginnings of all this.
Yeah, so that's like this specifically, the whole Marlin and Percy thing is just an idea that I'd always play around with as a kid. I remember I was probably like 10, 11, 12 and got like this book on cartooning. This is back when I was still set on being an artist. And I'd like try to draw things out of that. And the two I'd always go back to were these two monkeys, like a big kind of strong one and then like a goofier, smaller one. And I'd just like sketch them on everything, have them dressed up as superheroes. And so I'd make up stories to kind of go along with that. And back then I wasn't that familiar with comics on the whole, just as far as a storytelling method. But then as I like got more into comics in high school and college, that was something that I was more actively pursuing. And so when this gig came up, like my superhero story I had in my back pocket was this whole Marlin and Percy thing with the monkeys. And they weren't named that at the time, but it was something where it was like I had come up with this idea as a kid. So when Matt's asking us to come up with comics for kids, that was my first thought. Sort of like a by kids, for kids, but with Back to the Future thrown in there. So yeah, I talked it over with Tyler. We kind of threw a couple ideas back and forth, and that was the one we settled on, just kind of looking around at the things that were popular. And it's sort of like It's almost like Ninja Turtles meets Avengers sort of thing. You know, all the kids love that. And so when you're able to like get animals in and they're like fighting crime, it just seemed like a lot of fun. And the idea just kind of like got rolling from there. It sort of snowballed.
What are your thoughts, Tyler?
Yeah, well, like Caleb said, it was, that was all, I guess the inception was with him, but like I said, he and I had kind of worked on a few things before, but we hadn't done anything really with animals. It had all kind of been around human characters before, and we kind of talked about how that would be kind of a fun thing to do, and got started doing it, and it was a blast. And there aren't that many human characters. There are a few here and there, but all the, sort of the principal characters, all but about one of them are animals. And that's been really fun. And it's been a cool process to kind of, I guess, come up with how these characters look in my head, and have them kind of born out of that, and then play that off of Caleb a little bit and talk about, how does this match with what's in your head, and how does this not really line up with what you had kind of envisioned. So it's a lot of back and forth. A lot of it kind of just comes off the top of my head, and Caleb just kind of trusts me to do my thing, I guess, which might be good.
Things look a lot better in Tyler's head.
It might be a good idea that he trusts me to do that. It might not. But anyway, yeah, I kind of just dream up the stuff, and then it's a back and forth for, what do you think about this character design for Guinea? Or does this cape for Percy look okay? So that's kind of how it comes about. And it's really sort of an organic process, and it just kind of comes as it does. So where, Caleb has had these characters in his head for a while now, he'll come to me and say, well, in this one we're going to have a mongoose be the villain. And then I'll just kind of whip something up, and, in a couple hours I've got some stuff sent over to Caleb, and then we have a character. So that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question directly or not.
What's amazing to me in the process, as just the outsider, kind of the director of it all, I give these guys complete and total artistic license. So aside from, okay, let's do another comic, that's about all the direction that these guys get from me. And what's wild is Caleb will come up with a script, much like you'd see for a movie or a TV show, I'm sure, or whatever. And I'm reading through this thing, trying to follow it, quite honestly, and to understand what's going on. And then he sends it to Tyler, and Tyler comes back with these drawings in this world that bring this whole thing to life. And I just have not been blessed with any of that ability to see anything in 3D or in color like he has. But it has been so cool to be kind of on the inside watching all this creativity happen, because it's wild. And these comics I would put up against any comic book you've seen anywhere. One of the things that we intentionally have done with this series, and I'd love for you guys to touch on or talk about this a little bit, is the fact that my biggest concern today is there's a lot of trash that's out there. There's a lot of very dark comics out there today, and a lot of things that parents should be concerned about their little kids reading and having access to. So part of my direction behind all this is, hey, we need to keep this kid friendly. We need to keep this positive and uplifting, but let's have some fun with it as well, to where parents across the globe can be assured that their kids are not reading something that they have to be concerned about, so that we have specifically taken it as one of our jobs to be protectors of those kids that are our readers. Why don't you guys talk about that a little bit and the background?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that's definitely not geared towards kids. And I wish, I guess kind of same as you, I wish there were more. There's a lot of stuff that's accessible to older crowds that is definitely not kid friendly, and I think there should be more. I think it's kind of a shame that there's not more. So I don't know. It's definitely kind of a challenge to do that, because there's not, like I said, I didn't really grow up reading comics when I was a kid, so there's not really a precedent for me to work off of. Having said that, Caleb provides great content, which is pretty easy to work off of. So I try, some people have described my style when I'm not working on kid stuff as kind of dark. So I have to pull, get out of that mode completely, just clear my headspace and just completely switch gears. And it's really fun. And it's in some ways a really good challenge to, try, I shouldn't even call it a challenge, but to just work on something that's geared exclusively for a younger reading audience. Because again, like I said, not to be redundant, but I wish there was more stuff out there for kids to read, because of stories kind of like yours, Matt, where, there are kids who read because of comics. Stories like that. I wish there were more content that were accessible to kids, I guess.
Guys, let's take a short break. And when we come back, I want you guys to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the villains that populate the storyline, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the future of Marlin and Percy.
Sounds good.
Great.
Are you an educator, administrator, or school volunteer looking for a simpler way to raise money for your school? Let School Spirit Vending put their hassle-free year-round fundraising program to work for you. School Spirit Vending. We do all the work. You cash the check. Go to schoolspiritvending.com/school zone for all the details. All right, we're back. So like you guys touched on earlier in the interview, there's very few humans as part of the storyline. All of the villains are actually animals, which is a totally different spin on comics and on superheroes, obviously in general, and that genre. So talk to a little bit some of the different villains, kind of who they are, where they come from, that type of thing.
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, like you say that, and in our first issue we had a tandem villain where there was this mad scientist guy who was a human, and then his kind of baboon assistant who we quickly realize is sort of pulling the strings behind everything. And that's just been sort of fun for me, kind of moving through the issues, because like you said, a lot of people don't do that. It's sort of this whether it's Scooby-Doo or Ninja Turtles or any of that old stuff, there's always sort of like a human aspect to the villain. And I think it's kind of fun to take the story in a different direction. It just gives you so many options as far as like characterizing and in an extent humanizing these animals. It's just been kind of a fun playground for me, at least. And there's so many different ways to take it. There's something in the script for the newest issue where I had written in, because they were like solving crime in some Asian country, there was a villain who was a panda bear. And I had just written it in as like a throwaway gag. And then Tyler drew it and sent me the art just for that one page. And I was like, oh my gosh, this looks so cool. Like, I have to write more around this villain. Like work him in later. So that's just kind of in the back of my head for later. But it's neat kind of having that whole animal kingdom to draw from.
We've got Guinea, who is the baboon. We've got
Mongoose.
We've got the mongoose. We've got what's the most recent guy? The
capybara.
Yeah, the capybara.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Anyway, you guys have to read the comics. It's incredible how these guys have tied all this together. The artwork is phenomenal, and the storyline is cool. And we've completed 4 comics so far. Like I've said previously, many of you who have the School Spirit Vending hassle-free fundraising program in your school, your kids have been exposed to Marlin and Percy with each vend, in many cases, that they get out of our sticker machines, and will continue to be exposed to them in that format. And the full-length comics allow them to get a much deeper plot line, deeper storyline, and allow for these guys to really expand on the characters and create a story that is very compelling, exciting, and like I've said before, is completely clean and safe for kids of any age to be reading. What do you guys kind of see here over the next few years as we continue to work on this project? Marlin and Percy heading, and what would you love to see long term this kind of turn into?
Man, that's a good question, because I'm always trying to think with the story, kind of think several steps ahead so that it's building towards something. And I think you'll see with the new issue, we kind of start to blow things up where there's a bigger conspiracy revealed, and there's like some new villains that come back, some old ones who are done away with for a while. And then there's just like this whole new world of like, there's some, I don't want to give too much away, but there's different worlds that it kind of starts to look towards. Been kind of the plan from day one, so I'm interested to kind of like move towards that. But what was interesting for me when I was getting into comics, what first caught my eye was all this like Silver Age X-Men stuff from the 60s. And with that, in the early issues, you just have sort of like a single adventure with like, they're fighting Magneto and that's it. And then in like the next issue, they're fighting someone totally different. But several issues in, there's this world to build on, and villains start coming back, and there starts to be these more overarching plots. And it just goes on and builds on each other. And so I'm kind of excited at the opportunity to do that with these characters and see how their world expands. But yeah, I'm interested to hear what Tyler's looking forward to as well.
Yeah, I guess for me, or I guess for Caleb is the only person who has the excitement of knowing before anybody else what's going to happen. So even though I'm working on this and collaborating, right. Even though I'm working on this, I'm still sort of coming at it as a reader. I guess with the exception of Matt, I'm the first person to see the script. So even though there aren't any pictures, I'm still reading it as a comics reader, because when I read the words, the pictures are happening in my brain. So I guess like anybody else who, cares about Marlin and Percy, I want to know what's going to happen because I have no idea. Caleb doesn't really share that with me. So it kind of, which I like because it's, it's kind of something fresh to look forward to every time. And also, I just want to keep drawing these characters. I think they're fun. It's a good world for me to, put my brain in and contrive and to kind of, be excited about what does this aspect of this world look like? What does the underground snow monkey colony, what does that look like? And some of the characters are themselves really fun to draw. I love drawing Mongoose. He's my favorite for sure. So every time I turn a page and there's Mongoose, I get kind of excited because I get to draw him again. So he's so devious. But stuff like that, just getting to flesh out this world and visualize it and I guess make it happen is really exciting and something that I hope I get to keep continuing to do for a while.
So Caleb, how long? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, as far as the collaborative side, I think that's what's really cool is that on the one hand, there's like Tyler kind of waiting to see what happens next. And then on the other hand, because I want this to be fun on both sides, there will be times where I'll just like, call Tyler up and be like, hey, what's something you want to draw to like, so he's excited about it. And then I start getting excited about his ideas. I'm like, I never would have thought about that. And then it just kind of gets fun with that. And then sometimes there will be times where like, me being just like a fan of Tyler's art, I will be thinking like, what would be a scene that would look really cool in his style? And so it's kind of neat, like on both sides of things. My favorite thing is when like he finishes up a page and I get to be one of the first to see it. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I imagined, but like in color, and it looks so much better. And so that's fun for me.
So Caleb, how long does it take, from, okay, you finished number 4, and then I said, okay, let's go on to number 5. How long does it take for you to kind of write out a script? The comics are 24 pages in length. What's the time that's involved in that typically?
Man, it's kind of hard to answer that question specifically. Generally, as I'm writing an issue, I'll be outlining the next one at the same time, because like I want there to be panels in issue 4 that tie into what's coming next, where you can look back and be like, oh, that was being set up early on, whether it's just like, small visual cues or bits of dialogue. And so there's some things like in the issues we haven't even gotten to yet that I've planned out from kind of like that first set of 4-panel comics. So yeah, it's generally a process of like when I sit down to like really go after the next issue, there will be a couple days, if not a week, where I'm just like dwelling in that mindset. If I'm just walking around town and doing other stuff, like, all right, where am I going to take this next issue? Just really planning it out. And then I'll sit down and reference my notes from when I was writing the last issue. And then I'll write like a page by page outline, generally in kind of groups of like 2 pages at a time, since that's the way the pages turn. And then once I sit down to write, like turn that outline into an actual script, which is generally sort of a combination of the dialogue and the action and also like direction / letter to Tyler, that'll generally take me 1 or 2 days depending on how much time I'm able to sit down and do it. It seems strange looking back at it, realizing that, it's a 24-page comic. It comes out to maybe a 10, 11, 12-page script. But oftentimes that'll take me like 7 or 8 hours just in the writing to like sit down and really buckle down and get that out. Because the visual aspect of it and planning out the panels and kind of dwelling in that headspace, there's so much more you have to plan as opposed to just writing like prose.
What about you, Tyler? How long, once you have the script and we've got approval, how long does it typically take you to actually draw that out by hand and then do what you have to do digitally to produce the final product?
So that's a hard question to answer. It really varies. It's been getting quicker and quicker. I think as I get more familiar with this world and these characters and I just draw them more and more, I think there's just some innate, I don't know, it goes quicker and quicker every time. It makes more sense to me. It's easier. So I guess I'll go off of this most recent one that we finished, number 4. Probably, about a month or so, maybe a little bit more. So I'll start drawing it out by hand, and then I'll ink it so that the lines are clear. I'll scan it in so that it becomes a digital file, basically. And then from there, I'm working in Photoshop to do all of the color and the shading and the text and, cleaning up any stray marks, making things look a little better, just kind of touching it up. And then, once the color and the text are done, it's basically finished. Drawing the borders around the panels, most all of it except for the actual drawings of the characters and scenery themselves. Besides that, most everything is done digitally. So most of what you see is done on a computer. But like I said, it gets faster every time. The first one might have taken me a month and a half, 2 months. And then this most recent batch, I want to say it took me a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks to draw it all out. Caleb, I don't know if that sounds correct or not.
Yeah, maybe even quicker than that. I feel like it was under 2 weeks to draw.
Maybe it was. And now I'm coloring digitally, and I'm halfway through on number 5, and that was about a week ago. So this one, first one, total turnaround time, maybe about a couple months or so. And this one, I think it's going to be about a month, maybe a little longer, but not too much longer than a month before it's turned around from receiving the script to uploading everything and saying, here you go, I'm done. Let's get the final stamp of approval, and then we'll be good to go. And sometimes, I'll work it up, I'll do it, and then we'll submit it. And, Matt or Kayla will say, why don't we do this? This would make more sense, or this text would make more sense here, or let's, rearrange these panels, something like that. But usually those are pretty quick fixes. So, yeah, it's about a month or so, I would say at this point, just kind of depending on how quickly it goes and, how many panels there are to draw. That plays a part too. But I'd say about a month at this point it takes from start to finish.
And just to brag on Tyler with that, I follow a lot of comic book artists and just kind of see what their process is. And most people I look at, it takes, they generally do like 1 or 2 pages a day. And these are people who like, that's their one job. And Tyler, like, doing this in addition to his day job, like, just crank this thing out. And on top of that, he's doing the coloring and the text, which is usually the work of like 2 other people in a normal comic book. So he just like is absolutely crushing this. And I've been really impressed by how fast he's gotten.
Well, shucks. It's
Take a bow.
That's you can't see it, but I just did. No, that's he's right that it's usually the work is delegated between several people. So there's a writer usually, and then someone who draws things out, and then someone who does color, and then someone who does the text, and then someone who kind of edits usually, I think. But so it might seem like it's a lot more work for me to have to do. But honestly, I hope future collaborators don't hear this interview, because I actually like getting to do all of the color and all the inking and all the text by myself. It gives me a little bit more creative control. And I think it's a little more, maybe that's selfish. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but I think it's a little more fun that way. Because then I have complete free reign to do most whatever I want with the great stuff that Caleb sends over, and he makes it easy. Just I guess to return the brag, it's not like I get a script and I go, how on earth am I going to make this into something, or this is not drawable. I mean, it's, you know, he makes it easy, and it's great content, obviously. And yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a challenge. It's always a challenge to do something creative and good and quality, but for his part, Caleb makes it very easy.
I look forward to the school.
It helps that Tyler can do that because we don't have friends.
Wait, what did you say? Do I want to know?
I said it helps you can do all 3 jobs because we don't have that many friends to do it for us.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and you definitely don't want me doing it, that's for sure. So,
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad
asked.
that I'm glad that your role is originator and final stamp of approval. You do a knockout job of that.
Before we wrap up, let's talk a little bit about the themes, the principles. We talk about how, you know, Marlin and Percy are a principle-based comic series. We're really hoping to teach kids something and not just purely be for fun. So Caleb, talk a little bit about that, where some of those themes have come from, what some of them are, and the importance of that.
Yeah, that's something I really appreciate about this project, is it does lend itself to be an outlet to, you know, promote good values. And it's especially encouraging as, like, we're hearing back about kids being excited to read this where they might not be excited to read other things. It's like, well, if at this age a kid's going to have like one shot to like get a good message, like, you know, it better be good, right? So yeah, it's something that I'm definitely trying to be intentional about under Matt's guidance, as far as like focusing and really calling out within the comic things like friendship and teamwork, and like, yeah, they're superheroes and they're crime fighters, but like defining that it's not like this dark, gritty hero. It's, you know, we have the good guys and then there's the bad guys, and it's clear lines one way and another. And making that something that can be accessible for everyone is something that's important to me too. Like, so much lately there's been a focus on you know, things like gender equality, and that's something where at one point early on I was like, you know, do we need to have like a female monkey character? Not because I want to sell out or anything, but because I want, like, you know, girl readers to be able to like have access to this good message and be interested and invested. And then the more I thought about it, I realized that one of the 3 main characters, the girl with the blue headband or whatever blue headwear she's wearing, like, is a really strong character, and she's usually the one getting them out of trouble and is smart and is, like, you know, tough in a fight. And so that's something that I'm proud of, having that those good role models, whether it's a girl that, you know, young girl readers can look up to, or, you know, a monkey that a young boy reader can look up to.
Well, I am really, really excited about the School Zone audience getting a chance to see your guys' work. And one of the things I want to do to give them that opportunity, whether it be for their schools or whether it be for children or some child in their life, I'd really like to give away a copy of Marlin and Percy #1 in ebook format to anybody who would want it, so that you guys have the ability to be exposed to the beginnings of this and to get a feel for early on. I will tell you that it has gotten nothing but better and better as time goes on, and I hope that you'll expose and give the kids around you an opportunity to read and to learn, and would love to hear some feedback from the kids in your school. And then if you like what you see, then maybe you have the ability then to provide the other issues to the kids as well, as they follow along with this journey that we're all on, creating this amazing comic book series. So anyway, if you're interested in that, you can go to Marlin and Percy, MARLIN and PERCY.com /school zone to get your free copy, and hope you enjoy it. And like I said, would love to get some feedback as you share it with the kids in your life. Guys, thank you very much for your time. I know you guys are both busy. Looking forward to seeing where this journey continues to take us, and maybe having you guys on again in the future as we progress even further to kind of give folks an update on what's going on in Marlin and Percy land.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, hey, you guys have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
for having us.